At the stroke of midnight, behind the palace walls, a child whispers a name that should have been buried, Mommy. But it is the mother he knows. It's a memory haunting, vivid, unstoppable. Prince Louis, just 6 years old, is speaking truths no one taught him, revealing secrets the monarchy tried to erase. A woman lost to history, a boy too young to carry the weight, and a crown teetering on the edge. What he remembers could shatter the royal family forever. Are you ready to hear what the palace fears the most? At the stroke of midnight, behind the towering, silent walls of the palace, walls heavy with history, secrets, and unspoken truths, a small, trembling whisper escaped the lips of the youngest prince. I cry for mommy when the lights go out. What could drive a child, born into privilege, luxury, and splendor, to tears night after night? Tonight, Prince Louis finally breaks the silence he has kept hidden, and the truth that emerges is far darker, far more haunting than the monarchy ever anticipated. Before we delve deeper into what this revelation could mean for the royal family, make sure you subscribe. You won't want to miss a single unfolding detail. It began as an ordinary evening, the kind that might pass unnoticed in the manicured stillness of Windsor, but what was overheard that night would change everything. A passing staff member, accustomed to royal tantrums and bedtime fusses, froze in confusion at what she heard. It was not a cry for a toy, not a protest over brushing teeth, but a quiet, trembling voice that carried a weight no one could ignore. I cry for mommy when the lights go out. At first, the word seemed simple, almost innocent, until the realization hit. The mommy Louis referred to was not Catherine. Shockwaves rippled through the palace immediately. Initially, aides believed the child was merely tired, perhaps confused, lost in the dreamy half-world of childhood. But the phrase repeated itself, not once, not twice, but night after night. Even during daytime naps, murmurs echoed through his room. She says not to be afraid. Palace insiders grew unsettled. This was no ordinary grief. This was memory, vivid, specific, unaccounted for. Some tried to rationalize it, dismissing it as a child's imagination, blossoming in the isolation of royal nurseries. But that theory shattered when a nanny, inadvertently leaving an audio recorder on during bedtime, captured what would terrify even the most seasoned staff. Louis, speaking softly, almost reverently, addressed someone unseen. He was not scared nor playing, he was communing. She visits when I'm alone. She smells like roses and cries when I cry too. The family's most trusted aides whispered in alarm. Some insisted it was childhood innocence. Others, shaken to their core, suggested something far darker. One senior aide was reportedly overheard saying, "He's not imagining this, he's remembering her." And with that, the question shifted. It was no longer, what is Louis saying, but who is he remembering? It became painfully clear. The mommy in question was not Catherine. Royal panic reached fever pitch. Security alerts were raised, psychologists consulted, hushed conversations unfolded between Charles, Camilla, and William, but no one could agree on a course of action. What could one say to a child haunted by grief he should never have known? Then came the drawings. Crayon sketches scattered across Louis's bedroom floor revealed a woman, elegant, gentle-eyed, her head tilted slightly, a necklace strikingly familiar. The resemblance was unmistakable, Princess Diana. Louis had never been shown these photographs. They were nowhere in his nursery, not on his iPad. And yet, night after night, they appeared on his paper over and over. Now the palace was no longer dealing with an emotional puzzle. It was confronting a resurrection of memory, of legacy, of guilt. What Louis had unearthed with his innocent whispers was not just sadness, it was truth. A truth buried deep beneath pomp and protocol, now emerging through the unlikeliest voice. But what if Louis's nighttime cries were not born of fear, but of a forbidden memory the royal family had tried to erase? He had a mother, Catherine, loving, present, devoted. And yet the woman he called mommy was someone else. Someone who held his hand when no one else was there, someone who smelled of roses and sorrow. Was the young prince dreaming, or remembering someone who was never meant to be remembered? The silence in Louis's room was not empty, it listened, and in that space something spoke to him. Staff close to the family reported that Louis began describing midnight visits from a woman unknown to him in life. He spoke gently, reverently of her stroking his hair, singing lullabies no caretaker recognized, whispering soothing words. "Do not be afraid." During the day, his voice was playful, spirited. At night, it became solemn, almost sacred, and always he called her mommy. Catherine, who had devoted herself to creating a peaceful, nurturing home for her children, reportedly grew increasingly unsettled, not just by Louis's emotional episodes, but by their uncanny consistency. The songs he hummed in the mornings existed nowhere on any playlist, and the drawings, dozens upon dozens of them, depicted the same gentle woman over and over with a precision that far surpassed his years. "It's Diana, it's unmistakable," whispered one advisor who stumbled upon the images. In desperation, Catherine reportedly sought counsel from a senior royal aide who had served during Diana's final years. She asked not about politics or protocol, but about motherhood. "Do you believe children can feel things from before they're born?" Her voice trembled. The advisor offered no answer, only a warning. The past, once stirred, rarely goes back to sleep. An older, retired nanny, occasionally called upon to assist, offered a chilling confirmation. She had witnessed Louis whispering to empty corners of his room, not with playful make-believe, but with genuine, heartfelt sincerity. "I'm safe now," he had said. "But they hurt her heart before," he added. The words sent shivers down her spine. Whispers became speculation. Was Louis grieving someone he never met, or someone whose story had never been fully told to him? Royal historians offered a strange but compelling theory: bloodline memory, the idea that trauma, especially unresolved trauma, can imprint itself on future generations. The monarchy, built on lineage, now found itself haunted by its own history. Louis, who should have remained untouched by Diana's tragedy, seemed inexplicably bound to it, not by stories, not by pictures, but by something beyond explanation. One expert called it an ancestral echo, another a quiet vengeance. The Crown labeled it dangerous. And yet Louis continued to draw, to whisper, to cry for the woman who held him when no one was there. Camilla, upon hearing Louis mention Diana's name, reportedly erupted. "Enough of this ghost worship," she snapped. But it was too late. A war of legacy had begun. During a seemingly innocent family gathering, Louis, curious and unguarded, asked Camilla a question that silenced the room. "Was Diana your mommy too before you became mine?" The words pierced the air like a dagger. Camilla, humiliated and enraged, declared, "Banish that name from his mouth." What had been a delicate balance of royal unity began to fracture. Catherine, protective of her children, stood her ground. "He's a child, not a soldier in your PR war." Charles, caught in the center of this implosion, faced a dilemma he thought long buried. Camilla pressed him to intervene, to erase Diana's presence from Louis's consciousness forever. But even he, seasoned and weathered, knew the ghost had never truly left. Then the letters surfaced, private, emotional notes from Camilla to a confidant, expressing fear and frustration. "He's becoming her, that boy, he's turning into the ghost they never stopped mourning." Meanwhile, beyond the palace gates, the world began to notice. Social media erupted, comparing Louis to Diana, dubbing him the reincarnated heart of the late princess. The child had unwittingly become the vessel for a legacy long silenced. Every smile, every glance, every unguarded moment threatened the carefully curated control of the monarchy. But while Camilla demanded silence, someone else quietly fed Louis the truth. Catherine, poised and protective, faced a torment no title could shield her from. Night after night, Louis asked the same haunting question. "Was she your mommy too?" Finally, one evening, in a moment of courage and vulnerability, Catherine reached into a locked drawer and produced a worn, soft photograph of Diana holding a young William, eyes closed, smile timeless. "That's her," she whispered. "That's the woman in your dreams." Louis studied the photograph in silence, then looked at his mother and said softly, "She misses you too." Catherine said nothing more. Her heart, heavy with unspoken truths, finally cracked. But this quiet act of defiance set in motion a chain reaction, drawing an unlikely protector into Louis's secret, Prince William. Torn between duty and paternal love, William made a vow at Diana's grave, a vow to ensure that Louis would never grow up afraid of her name, that her memory would never be erased. On the morning of Louis's birthday, William quietly slipped away alone to Althorpe. Beneath the towering trees and beside the tranquil waters, he knelt, hand on stone, whispering words only the wind could carry, a father's promise, a son's inheritance not of crowns but of memory. Back at the palace, advisors urged caution, warning that reverence for Diana's legacy could destabilize the monarchy. They encouraged teaching Louis duty, heritage, and loyalty, yet no protocol could contain what Louis already knew. No storybook, no command could shield him from the echoes of the past now flowing through his young, tender heart. They warned him, bringing Diana back into the narrative would mean reopening old wounds, wounds that had already bled for decades. And then it arrived. A letter. Found tucked inside an envelope marked simply, "For my son." It had remained sealed in the family archives for years. No one could have predicted the revelation within. The handwriting was unmistakable, delicate yet defiant, unmistakably Diana's. Her words spoke of a dream she'd carried in the final years of her life, a dream of a child she would never meet, yet somehow knew. "There will be a little one," she wrote, "who will remember me without ever knowing why. Protect him, for he carries more than blood." William sat with the letter for hours. He read it slowly, pausing, then rereading each line, letting the weight of the message sink in. Suddenly, his son's sleepless nights, his ghostly midnight questions, his eerie insistence, they were no longer strange. They were inevitable, perhaps they were destined. A deep conflict tore at William. Could he serve the institution while honoring this truth? Could he remain the future king while protecting a mother the crown had tried to silence? Every time he looked into Louis's eyes, he saw echoes of a woman taken too soon, of a child too young to bear such weight, of a legacy too dangerous to ignore. In quiet, private moments, away from palace ears, away from cameras, away from protocol, William began answering Louis's questions, tenderly, carefully. He spoke of a woman who danced in hotel kitchens, who loved fiercely, who spoke truths even when they hurt. He spoke of Diana, not the icon, not the legend, but the mother. And for the first time in weeks, Louis slept through the night. But as William leaned into the past, the institution pushed back. Shadows moved behind the gilded walls, seizing on the child's grief to strike. One boy's sorrow had now ignited a crisis that rippled through the entire palace. Royal officials scrambled, desperate to silence whispers, fearing the world would believe Louis's visions if they became headlines. Secret meetings convened in hushed corridors. Talk of containment, of exile, even psychological evaluation began circulating. What had started as murmurs in a nursery had infected the heart of the monarchy. Aides who had dismissed Louis's midnight confessions as mere dreams now trembled with fear. "She told me not to trust them," the child reportedly said during a late-night cry. Somehow, those words found their way onto an encrypted palace transcript, a spark in dry kindling, igniting a fire the crown could not immediately control. Panic within the inner circle escalated. Senior courtiers convened emergency consultations, their recommendation blunt: intervene medically. Precautionary, they claimed, wrapped in concern, but those closest to the truth knew better. They weren't trying to heal Louis, they were trying to silence him, not because he was sick, but because he remembered what they had buried. Some proposed removing him entirely from London, a wellness retreat, perhaps the countryside, perhaps abroad. The message was clear: distance the child before his words reached the public, before the world could fall in love with his pain, before they could believe him. But distance alone was not enough. In shadowed corners, a more insidious plan emerged. Catherine would be discredited, painted as overwhelmed, indulgent, unstable. The logic was cruelly simple: if the public lost faith in the mother, they would stop listening to the child. Catherine, already exposed, became the perfect target. Then came the darkest move of all. MI5 was quietly consulted, not for security, not for threat assessment, but for containment. A small team monitored all digital chatter relating to Diana and Louis, leaks, insiders' whispers. Phones were checked, emails scanned, loyalty tested. At the heart of it all sat the Queen Consort's office, drafting a confidential memo under the codename Project Reset. One line, allegedly glimpsed by a shaken aide, read: "The child must not become a symbol." But it was already too late. Louis was no longer speaking on someone else's timetable. He spoke on his own, in his own voice, in the quiet of the night, and what he said next would stop every plan cold. In a chilling exchange caught on a nanny's audio recorder, Louis whispered, "She told me what you did to her, and she's coming back." The words were spoken softly, but their weight was seismic. It began on an ordinary evening. A nanny tasked with monitoring Louis while Catherine attended a private engagement had left her audio recorder running, a routine precaution. But what it captured was no ordinary restlessness, it was revelation. Louis described scenes, words, and memories that no child of 6 should have known. One phrase nearly matched a line Diana had spoken in a confidential interview, never meant for the public ear. He spoke of a dark car, of flashing lights, of a crying woman in the back seat, and Mo sent hauntingly. They watched, they chose not to stop it. The audio, brief but explosive, tore through the palace calm like a hurricane. When Camilla heard it, sources say she reportedly collapsed, demanding the tape be destroyed. But by then, copies had been made. The truth had escaped the walls. Those who had worked hardest to suppress the past now scrambled to silence a voice from beyond it. Charles, William, and Catherine convened a private crisis meeting, reviewing the tape for hours. But there was no agreement, only paralysis. The implications were more than political, they were spiritual. For the first time, the royal family confronted not a scandal, but a haunting. Whispers suggested something ancient was at work. Diana's legacy had not been rewritten, it had found a new vessel, one too young to be corrupted, too pure to lie. Outside the palace, secrecy could no longer hold. Rumors of prophecy leaked, a belief that Diana had intended to return not in flesh but in spirit. Louis, with his haunting gaze and solemn voice, fit the story perfectly. Speculation exploded worldwide. Was he a psychic echo of Diana? Had her memory chosen the only royal untouched by scandal? Or was something darker at work, something no monarch could silence? Then one royal broke ranks, deciding to reveal Louis's truth to the world. What emerged was raw, heavily edited footage, the most controversial since Diana's Panorama interview. It had been filmed privately, meant to help specialists understand Louis's sleep patterns, but it captured far more. When gently asked about his dreams, Louis spoke with a calmness beyond his years. He described a woman who visits under the moonlight. "She smells like flowers and sadness," he said. "She tucks me in and tells me stories no one else knows." At first the words seemed innocent, but then came the revelations. He spoke of her pain, her tears, her heartbreak. "She cries in the mirror when I ask about her boys. They broke her heart with a lie." No names were spoken, yet everyone knew exactly who he meant: Diana. The footage, intended for a handful of aides, psychologists, and crisis managers, escaped, perhaps through compassion, perhaps vengeance. Within days, the story went viral. Clips of Louis whispering, "She said they didn't protect her, so now she protects me," flooded social media. Hashtags trended globally. People saw innocence, honesty, and a haunting link to the woman who had once made the monarchy tremble. Chaos erupted in the palace. Camilla, already under immense private pressure, reportedly came close to collapse. Approval ratings plummeted. Protesters gathered, holding signs depicting Diana with Louis. The public's voice was clear. They saw the connection and they were listening. Inside, lockdowns were enforced, phones confiscated, staff access restricted. Even William and Catherine were briefly removed from public appearances, fueling speculation. But it was too late. Louis's image, small, sincere, heartbreakingly honest, was already etched into the public consciousness. People weren't watching a prince, they were witnessing history speak through a child, a boy mourning someone he never met yet somehow knew, a boy unraveling royal silence with every word. The monarchy, centuries old and meticulously controlled, could not outmaneuver the soft, persistent voice of grief. Diana was no longer memory. Through Louis, she had become reckoning. And then, buried deep in Kensington Palace, a final twist emerged. A letter, decades old, revealing Diana's foresight. She had written of a boy with eyes like oceans who would speak when the world no longer listened. "He is the voice I could never be," she had written. Louis matched her vision perfectly. His birth, temperament, even the inexplicable grief aligned. Catherine, upon seeing the letter, reportedly sat in stunned silence for nearly an hour. She has since kept a copy hidden in her personal diary. What began as speculation had now become myth, but unlike most myths, this one had a heartbeat. Globally, people called Louis not just a royal child, but a spiritual successor. Murals depicting Diana holding a boy with Louis's features appeared. Candlelight vigils were held for a living child whose very existence seemed to channel the heartbreak of a woman gone too soon. The crown had faced scandal before, loss, public scrutiny, but this was something entirely new. It was prophecy, and it terrified them. Louis never asked to be believed. He never claimed power or purpose. He simply felt, and in that innocence he became unstoppable. The institution could spin scandal, it could attempt control, but it could not outmaneuver destiny. The public had chosen their symbol. Diana's memory had become a weapon of truth. Louis was a threat to continuity. One leaked memo read, "He must be distanced, reframed, or absorbed." But how do you reframe a prophecy? How do you absorb a soul? As the monarchy hesitated, the world surged. Trust in the crown falter. Questions about Diana's death resurfaced. William faced an impossible choice: protect the institution or protect his son. For Louis was no longer just remembering Diana, he had become her voice. He spoke, he cried, he remembered, and the world listened. And as the House of Windsor trembles, one question echoes louder than all others. If Louis was chosen to speak, who else is waiting to be heard?